So when you're a disgraced media personality that got ousted by the network, got called out, we know that you're a pathological liar, we know that your journalism does not have any integrity or expertise, it's flawed journalism, it's just stenographer reporting on the basis of the establishment. What do you do? Do you retire? Do you go paint? Do you go out of media? Do you just quit it altogether? Well, apparently, in this age of corruption and what we call the revolving door situation, where once you become a corrupted individual, you can just landslide your way into another position. Um, Brian Stelter of CNN. You remember Brian Stelter? The reliable source king that didn't have any reliable sources. Well, apparently he's taking on the ivory towers of Harvard. I kid you not. I kid you not. The disgraced journalist himself, who got ousted by CNN because he didn't have any reliable sources, is now getting a media fellowship at Harvard. Which goes to show you that even top colleges and universities can still produce garbage. Brian Stelter is going to teach at Harvard, a media fellowship at Harvard. Who greenlit this? Who was the front runner to decide, yeah, we're gonna get the guy who got ousted on CNN, the one who got schooled by so many individuals, to be part of Harvard and their media studies? Oh my God. Well, I mean, Bush went to Yale, so anything can happen at these institutions, I guess. But here's what the New York Post said about this. So it says, fired CNN talking head Brian Stelter landed a fellowship at Harvard, the former host of the since-canceled Reliable Sources said Monday. Stelter broke the news on social media that he'll be joining the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard's Kennedy School this fall. Personal news, I'm joining the Schultzer Center at Harvard Kennedy School, Stelter tweeted. This fall, I'll be the Walter Shorenstein Media and Democracy Fellow concerning discussions which of some will be live streamed. Grateful to Nancy Gibbs and her team for the home. According to Harvard, Stelter will convene a series of discussions about threats to democracy. I can't believe this is happening. Let me read that again. According to Harvard, Stelter will convene a series of discussions about threats to democracy and the range of potential responses from the news media at the Ivy League School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Stelter, who was ousted last month amid sweeping changes at the cable news network, wrote on social media that some discussions will be live streamed, taking on the similar format as his former CNN show. He also thanked Nancy Gibbs, the director of the center and storied former editor-in-chief of Time magazine, for the opportunity. But this is classic revolving door. When a corrupt politician leaves office and they've done all the shady insider work that they've done, they go and work for the corporate estate. They go work for some corporation. They go work for a lobbying firm. And apparently with a disgraced news personality that has been ousted so many times just by regular people. I mean, we've done videos correcting the record, and we have more reliable sources than this nutcase, but he gets a job at Harvard. Oh, God. This will be the time where I'll say that college may not be a wise investment. If you're paying money to see this schmuck educate you on media studies, my God. I hope you get your money back. I hope you do. Stelter was left flat-footed last month when he was fired by CNN boss Chris Leach who was in the process of recentering the network's programming away from left-leaning punditry and toward middle-of-the-road fact-based reporting. No, that's not the problem with CNN. That's not the problem with CNN. The problem with CNN is, much like any other media outlet, it's become too corporate and brainwashed into the establishment media tycoon landscape. That's the problem there. That's the problem there. That's why people turn to YouTube. That's why people turn to podcasters. That's why people like Jimmy Dore and Kim Iverson and Jackson Hinkle or myself or any other people are way more trusted sources for people to engage with and educate. And, you know, some things I don't get right all the time, but we engage. And why is that? Because I'm not bought out by corporations. I don't have sponsorship deals. I don't have advertisers, you know, glooming at the back of my head. I'm able to just speak on behalf of what I see and be objective to what I see. That's what this is all about. Stelter's show, Reliable Sources, which airs Sundays at 11 a.m., was meant to offer a critical view of how the media covered big news and events of politics. Some critics said it developed into a show bashing Fox News, the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and former President Donald Trump without taking a critical look at liberal media bias. Exactly. Like, I don't watch CNN. But the amount of clips I've seen him talking about a tweet that Donald Trump has done, or how he mentioned Joe Rogan so many multiple times without any fact-based reporting on the vaccines or any objective reporting on the situation with COVID, not talking to doctors, not talking to researchers, not questioning the fact that the guy who invented the technology was silenced out of the mainstream dialogue. Like, none of that was ever reported. But you're going to go after Twitter users, you're going to go after Fox News, you're going to go after the people that are questioning Hunter Biden's laptop, which is a scandal within itself. It's just such a terrible propaganda smear job, and, you know, people were just sick and tired of it. And ordinary people were calling this guy out. Like, it's sad that people that are not even considered journalists can outsmart the journalists. Just the world that we live in. So I just want to show you some of the moments where Brian Stelter and his reliable sources got him. And just a heads up to Harvard and anyone that's attending Harvard thinking that this guy is potential. Pay attention to this. So this is what he mentioned about when Joe Rogan caught COVID, and he was able to cure himself by going to a doctor. A doctor prescribed him ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, monoclonals, other vitamins and minerals, all beneficial things that actually helped him in the process. And CNN did not take the reliable source to investigate it, but instead smeared Joe Rogan. And here's what they had to say.
All kinds of opinions.
Which sounds great, but not all opinions are created equal. You think about major newsrooms like CNN that have health departments and desks and operations that work hard on verifying information on COVID-19. And then you have talk show stars like Joe Rogan who just wing it, who make it up as they go along. And because figures like Rogan...
And you think with all the people that work at CNN and all the health department experts that they have there, they would understand that Joe Rogan went to his doctor and the doctor prescribed him that medication to get himself better with COVID. So if anyone is smeared in this situation, why are they not asking the doctor then? Why are they not interviewing Joe Rogan's doctor then? Because Joe Rogan was not the one that went in and said, hey, I'm just going to take a bunch of drugs and wing it. He went to a doctor. He got an opinion by a medical professional. And your medical professional was Sanjay Gupta, who got owned on the Joe Rogan podcast when Joe Rogan said Isn't it kind of weird that ivermectin, you smeared me with ivermectin, horse dewormer, even though I was prescribed this by a doctor, even though it's on the top essential drugs of the World Health Organization, even though it's had clinical tests that have proven 80% effective, you're smearing me for taking for horse dewormer. You're smearing me for being a conspiracy nut. You're smearing me for being some sort of Trumper, anti-democracy, hatred, bigot, something like that. Their own doctor got smeared and schooled by Joe Rogan. And they still can't take that in. Here's also this. Remember when Stephen Colbert even schooled him. Stephen Colbert owned Brian Stelter on his own talk show. And we know about Stephen Colbert. He's been the shill of CBS since he got that show. He was great on the Colbert Report, but then got lost between the way. But even Stephen Colbert, even a pansy like him, is going to school Brian Stelter on the Chris Cuomo investigation, on the whole Cuomo conspiracy around CNN. Take a listen to this.
How does that create any conflict over at CNN behind closed doors? Are people mad at him, or is he in trouble?
Some people are mad at him. By the way, I can confirm the New York Times report. I'll confirm it for your viewers. I also have a source that says Chris was on the phone with his brother this week.
Is your source Chris Cuomo?
He is not. He is not. You got to have boundaries.
That's actually a funny joke. I'll give him that. Because all he says, well, I have a source that told me he was on the phone and he was talking to his brother. Is the source Chris Cuomo? You gotta ask those questions. Because this is a guy who hosts reliable sources, and all he kept saying was he has a source. A source. Is the source you? Is the source your neighbor? Is it a doctor? Is it a journalist? Is it an official? Who's the source? How can you have a reliable source if you don't even tell us what the source is?
You got to draw a line.
Why? He doesn't.
I think he does, actually.
Really?
I think Chris does. I don't know about the governor.
What are the boundaries?
I think Chris does.
What are the boundaries?
The boundary that CNN management presented to him in May when they admitted he screwed up. They said, you know, what you did was inappropriate. You were on the phone with your brother's aides advising them on what to do, and that was inappropriate. But they said, of course you're going to...
Yeah, it was a little inappropriate. It's a little inappropriate. You gotta keep in mind, this is the management at CNN. The reason why any of this even happened is because they got caught. Because ordinary viewers caught them red-handed. If people didn't notice it right away, if they did a better job trying to hide this from the general public, if they didn't have Andrew Cuomo on every goddamn night on Chris Cuomo's show while a bunch of seniors in New York got killed by neglect of long-term care facilities during the COVID pandemic, then they would probably get away with this and management wouldn't say it's such a disappointment. But now Brian Stelter has to be the PR person to go on Stephen Colbert and be like, well, CNN management said it was very inappropriate. So they did something. They retaliated. So don't discredit me.
We're going to talk.
And then he got fired. He got fired after all this.
To your brother. You know, there's nothing more important.
But he didn't talk about his brother once the trouble started. He said, I'm not going to talk about my brother.
And that was also a management ruling. And so the
but
way
why didn't
I
they rule that
this,
way when his brother was on the show pretty much every night during the COVID crisis?
I think it's really complicated.
That seems like an odd conflict of rules.
It is an odd conflict, but I don't think if we open up the journalism ethics book, there's no page for this. It's the craziest set of circumstances you can imagine.
And this guy is going to teach at Harvard about media studies. I don't know if there's an exact page on ethics and accountability, and I don't know if there is something in the journalism textbook about how the fact your brother, your corrupted family, is allowed on television every single night during a pandemic situation, during an emergency situation where tens of thousands of New Yorkers were dead on the streets and you didn't do jack shit for them. I don't know if there's any ethical conundrum with that. Jesus Christ. And this guy gets picked up by Harvard. So I have to ask myself, is Harvard really a smart school? Is Harvard really worth it? I know people always say that, like, oh, these Ivy schools are the top of the class. You can get a great education and you'll be set for life. You know, they always want those Harvard, Yale types. But if this is the teachers that they're getting, if this is the people that they want interacting with the students and educating them, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? That this guy is the host of Reliable Sources. He got ousted by CNN because he didn't have reliable sources. And he doesn't know jack shit about ethics or journalism integrity or anything about the situation. Oh, a source told me. Oh, wow. You're such a credible person. Or even this, when Ted Koppel schooled the media critic of CNN about how CNN operated during the Trump administration, because everyone likes to say that, you know, Trump was such a bad person. Trump was such a demon to the press, but the press actually loved it. The press loved Donald Trump. And Ted Koppel is going to explain that.
Everybody here keeps talking about ideology and politics. Money. 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 Donald Trump has been very, very good for baseball. He has been wonderful for the industry. Your boss acknowledged as much a number of months ago during the campaign.
Les Moonves,
Donald Trump, huh?
It was Les Moonves who acknowledged
Les Moonves also acknowledged it, but so did the head of CNN.
They all said it. Les Moonves was the first one that said it. Yeah, Donald Trump will be bad for the country, but great for CBS. We're going to get our ratings up because of all the scandals, because of all the tweets, because he's such a wild child. And CNN did the same thing. ABC did the same thing. NBC did the same thing. I mean, they hosted The Apprentice on NBC for many, many goddamn years. They love Donald Trump. But it's all ideologue, it's all political, it's all BS, it's all corporate agenda. It's the fact that Donald Trump puts a bad face on the establishment. That's why all this is happening. That's why the FBI probe. That's why they started in Mar-a-Lago. That's why they don't want him to run in 2024, because he puts a bad image on the nefarious bullshit that happens behind closed doors. He's the cold sore of the establishment.
But that means what? If ratings
means,
are up, that means what?
The ratings are up. It means you can't do without Donald Trump. You would be lost without Donald Trump.
Well, that is what he says.
Ted, you know that's not true.
CNN's ratings would be in the toilet without Donald Trump.
You know that's not true. You're playing for laughs. You've lived through enough presidencies to know there will be more
Brian.
presidents.
What were the ratings before Trump and what are the ratings now?
I would say we might be up 20, we might be up 30%, we might be up 40%. If we go back down 40%, that's okay too.
Well, it may not be okay.
Of course it is. No, but hold on.
Just to note that the audience and the people around him are laughing at him for that. This is the media critic at CNN. And he doesn't even know he doesn't understand the ratings at CNN. The fact that people were glued to their television sets were because Trump, because all the scandals of Trump, because he manufactured a hatred for Trump. So, of course, Trump was great for all the cable news outlets. It was great. But now, post-Trump or before Trump, it was sloppy. And they're doing even worse. CNN Plus had to go down because nobody wanted to watch the original CNN. Why would they want to watch a streaming service of it? This is the media critic at CNN, and he's getting schooled by so many individuals. And he gets a job at Harvard.
I reject the premise that these networks are making so much money off of Trump and thus we benefit from it.
Tell me for a moment, if you will, let's get away from CNN then, all right? Sensitive subject.
No.
Let's go to MSNBC. Is there a moment of the day when they are not focusing on Donald Trump or some intimately related subject, it is essentially, I know every once in a while. If the number of people who died in Indonesia gets up to 1,000, they'll give it a mention or two. But by and large, the only news that's covered, program after program after program.
Ted,
there you go. So Ted Koppel also schooling Brian Stelter. Even Stephen Colbert, even a schmuck like him, is schooling Brian Stelter. This is just how dumbfounded, the whole situation, it goes to show you that you don't have to be a smart person, you don't have to be a likable person, you don't have to have the qualities. I was told my entire life that the best way to get into these fancy careers and have these fancy titles, you got to be the smartest, you got to be the top earner, you have to give 110%, and these schmucks are able to walk in cozy because it's the revolving door. They either get into politics or they know famous people or money's thrown around here and there, and they exchange goods towards one another, and then next thing you know, bang, they get into these top fancy job placements, and you wonder why they're in the positions that they are. Why is the FCC caring so much about Verizon when you realize, the guy that's in the FCC is actually a Verizon lawyer and is going back to Verizon after he's done manipulating, screwing the policies that makes Verizon a lot more money and screws over the people. That's the takeaway of all this. And Caitlin Johnstone points this out. She says Brian Stelter went from a mainstream media gig to a gig at Harvard. Jen Psaki, that was the former press secretary of the Biden administration. Jen Psaki went from a gig in the Biden administration to a gig in the mainstream media. Mike Pompeo, the former CIA head, who said he lied, cheat, and steal on the regular. Mike Pompeo went from a gig in the Trump administration to a gig in a DC think tank. And she points out the same line that George Carlin has always said, and I strongly believe, it's a big giant club and you ain't in it. That's to take away from all of this. It's not about smarts. It's not about ethics. It's not the fact that Brian Stelter is somehow good in the world. It's the fact that Brian Stelter is part of this big giant club and you ain't in it. You and I ain't in it. And now he's going to teach a bunch of Harvard people how to be a media tycoon schmuck who's a stenographer for the establishment. Not actually being critical, not actually being a journalist, not having any ethics or understanding about the media landscape, but just to be a stenographer so you get a job placement at CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, New York Times, what have you, to repeat manufactured lines by the State Department. Just the kind of education you'll get at the Harvard Media Studies. Now run by Brian Stelter. Jesus. I can't even make this up.